Hi, everybody. I am Carol Kaufman. I'm the founder of the Institute of Coaching, and I am here with Sanyin Siang, who happens to be one of my dearest friends. We are in a whole group together with people, so I know her well, and I'm delighted she's here. Sanyin is a bunch of things. Number one, she is the number one coach in the world by Thinkers 50. She hates that I say that, but it's true. And she also just happens to teach at Duke, where she's involved, and she can tell you more about it, with the whole Coach K program there. She's written one book called Launch. She's working on another called Superpowers. And just delighted to have you here, Sanyin.
Oh, Carol, we're going to have so much fun today because every conversation with you, I always leave learning so much. And I'm such a huge fan of the Institute of Coaching and what you and the entire team have created and how you've changed the field. By the way, you guys have an upcoming conference, don't you? Can you tell me more about the speakers that you have?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So everybody, we're having a conference on September 23rd, 24th, 25th. It is virtual, and it is a half day, kind of in the middle of the day, to make it easy for people around the world. So one of us, Sanyin and I, are friends with Jim Kim. Jim he helped start the Partners in Health with Paul Farmer. He was the CEO of the World Bank, and he is credited with saving well over 25 million lives. And he is very interested in coaching, thinks it's really important for the future, and we're going to be talking about that. Then, I don't know if you guys have heard about this book called The Optimist Telescope. That author, Beena Venkataraman, who was Obama's advisor on climate change, she'll be with us. Then we have two Harvard Business School professors. One is Amy Edmondson. I think most of you will have heard of her. She put psychological safety on the map. But we also have Sidal Neely, who is a guru on making remote teams work. A couple more. One is Lisa Orb Austin. She wrote, and I know you love this, Sanyin. She wrote, Own Your Own Greatness and Overcome the Imposter Syndrome. And her work is brilliant. On top of that, so many of you at the involved with the Institute really value research, and we will be having 5 major researchers. So Richard Ryan on self-determination theory, which is the backbone of coaching. If you don't know about it, it will really help you. Robert Biswas-Diener, the Indiana Jones of positive psychology, too cool for words. But he's going to talk about his dad, Ed Diener, who died this year, who Marty Sullivan calls him the real father of positive psychology, and I'll be interviewing him. And then some other researchers who are also practitioners. So we're just hoping to make you all come very, very expanded in this sort of massive geopolitical stuff and really able to do your practice better. So thank you. And if you just show up to instituteofcoaching.org, we'll have a sign at the top about how to register. But if not, just go into conferences and events. Events and then conferences. So, okay, great. Oh, I just saw Alessia put the conference link right in your chat. So Sanyin, what do you feel like talking about today?
Oh my gosh, the world is changing so fast, right? And so we can dive into this idea of superpowers and why we don't always own why our distinctive and innate inimitable strengths are blind spots. Or we can dive into the idea of life of significance. We just launched a podcast series at Duke called Duke Life of Significance. Go to found podcasts everywhere, and it's about how do we rethink how we matter, who matters, and why we matter, right? And how we want to matter. And and these are all interrelated with coaching, because I think one of the shifts in coaching as the world has shifted from work life to just life is that part of helping leaders be even at their best performance is also helping them have a broader perspective of how to live a truly meaningful life. So there's different, we can talk about teams. So I think, and they're all related. So just pick a moment and we'll dive in.
Well, it's like you were telling me earlier, if you want to have a life of significance, it's really important that you know what your superpowers are.
Yes.
And, many of us in positive psychology have been studying strengths for a long time. And what they say is strengths are like the wallpaper that you don't see.
Yes.
And I just love to hear, like, what are superpowers? How'd you come up with the idea?
All right. So as with everything I work on, I'm the first customer, right? I'm wrestling with the problem. And I discovered I wake up every morning excited to be talking to different people. Like today, I'm like, oh, I get to talk with my friend Carol on CoachX conversations. But I find I don't wake up excited to be me, right? I don't get inspired by me. And I was wondering why. And then as I was doing a lot of 360s and working with in my coaching practice and also with my work with brilliant students, I discover when we sit down to take a full assessment of our strengths and weaknesses, the pattern is, okay, let's glide over the strengths. Right. Let's just jump to the part of the report or the conversation that's where I can improve upon. And the more I thought about that, I realized, wait a minute, this is one of our biggest blind spots. So superpowers, the way I define them as different from just traditional strengths, is that they are innate, instinctive, and inimitable, right? And they, because of that, they give us a lot of energy in their practice. So as an example, I am good at PowerPoint decks and Excel spreadsheets. They do not energize me. And the convention is, let's only team up with people for which that is, for things are our weakness. And I was like, no, I should be teaming up for people for which Excel and PowerPoint decks are their superpowers, but my ability so I can focus on my ability to connect people or to conceptualize, or envision and pull people together. And so it has implications for teams. But if we take this idea that it's one of our biggest blind spots, how do we discover it? The interdependency with each other. We're dependent on other people to help us see ourselves clearly. And one of the things we need their help on seeing us is helping us see what are our superpowers.
I'd be really curious, given all your role in teaching and lots of workshops, what are a couple of the exercises you've asked people to do to help see this?
So one of my favorite ones is I would pull like a small group together, and I would just have them go take one person. Like, so if it's like you say we're all part of the small group.
Yeah.
Right? These people we trust, or it could be a team. And I would say, all right, now it's Carol's turn. Everyone, let's go around the table and share a little bit more about Carol's superpowers. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Lovely seeing the light on the person's face as they're hearing this, because whoever suffers from overappreciation, right? And isn't it, we as a society don't spend enough time in that collective reflection of each other's strengths. And in fact, I would say our society, we're trained to say, focus on the deficiencies when we should also be looking at the proficiencies.
It's really interesting how that jives with positive psychology. I'm not sure if Sonia Lubomirsky or who came up with this originally, but what they talk about is that negative things are like Velcro, and your brain will stick to those. But positive things are like Teflon, and they'll slide away. And it sounds like you're going to help people reverse that with this concept.
And the thing is, as with all coaching, it's practice, right? So making that into a habit, and then we need the help of others. So then this becomes a team exercise to, one, let's help each other identify each other's superpowers. And by the way, what I may say is your superpower may be different from another one of your teammates, right? And we're getting a fuller perspective. And also, what I'm sharing about you gives you insight into what I find important. So, for example, if one of your superpowers is the ability to develop others, I might say, Carol her superpower is mentoring because she always asks questions that make me think about things in new and fresh ways. Another one of the teammates might say, oh, well, Carol her superpower is developing others and being a mentor because she always makes me feel like I matter when I speak with her. Okay, we're talking about similar superpowers about you, but from different angles. And that should also give an insight into what we find important, right? And so there's so much data from that sort of exercise. And I love doing that because data is what creates the context in which we operate. And what's a superpower can also be a kryptonite.
Oh, let's pause on that one and go there next. I totally believe that. But, I also hear, what's really powerful to me is, creating the impact you want.
Yes.
And here it's what's the impact of the different superpowers?
Yes. And I think sometimes we as our systems are designed to recognize certain superpowers. But what I'm trying to push all of us to see is for maximizing that impact is go beneath what the system currently recognizes and sees and go deeper and say, what are the things that also are adding value? So for example, we all know that person who loves going around and integrating. I call them the integrator, who loves going around and they understand what everyone else is working on. And so naturally they're pollinating, right? Now that integrator role is so important because it's necessary we have diversity on the team, but that is insufficient. To really maximize the power of diversity, you also have to understand how those diverse parts fit together. But oftentimes, due to the demands on our time and attention, we're still working in silos. So that person who loves talking and say, oh, well, I just talked to Carol and Carol's working on this. Gosh, Julie, this is similar to what you're working with. It's an intellectual integration role. That's a superpower and that's substantive. Yeah, when's the last time we promote someone for that or recognize someone for that, right? But that's so key to formation of teams and building high performance teams. So this is...
Oh, you know what that reminds me of? This is going to seem a little tangential, but that is how I think. We, at the Institute, we donate, we award grants. And one of our very first grants was called the Coaching Ripple Effect. And what it was is, let's say I'm coaching you.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is we typically measure what's the impact of the coaching on the person being coached. Well, what this guy, Sean O'Connor, did is he also looked out like a ripple. And so it turned out that coaching not only impacted you, but it impacted 1 and 2 rings out from you. So then put that together with Malcolm Gladwell's idea of the Maven, which sounds like the integrator. Mm-hmm. And what happened is if you then coach the integrators, it spreads through the system much more than if you're coaching the non-integrators who... It may be very important for them, but as you said, it's really important for an organization to really foster the people that, I like your word, integrators. Mavens is Malcolm's word, but that doesn't really say much. Integrators really does. That's, I guess when you name a superpower like that, you start seeing it.
Yes, this is about, isn't that what so much of this past 20 months have forced us to do, is see things in new ways, make visible what is valuable but previously unseen, right? Uh-huh. And so it's also, I think a lot of times our management systems are still designed based on individualistic contributions. So they're designed to see individualistic contributions. What I think we need to move to, when you think about it, in a complex, in a volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous world, the team is now the micro unit of success in the organization, right? So moving to this team means we also have to see the team. I have a new piece coming out. It's going to be in dialogue review in September. It's on how do we rethink the assists, right? Because there are assist superpowers that are so critical because it's a second, third, just as what you're talking about, the coaching ripple effect, the second, third, and fourth order in today's ecosystem-like world is just as important as the first order effect, right? And so when we look at that, the assist is a second order effect, but the assist is needed. We record assists in sports. Why don't we record those in our corporate world?
I love that. And you, same thing. How do you help people discover? It sounds like one of these sort of slippery superpowers, as opposed to ones like, okay, helping others, I can really get a handle on that. Integrators, I can get a handle on that.
Yeah.
Assisters, how do you help identify an assister and help an assister identify themselves?
So I think one is that exercise that I do is, and I've done it with my students. I've done it with executive leadership teams.
Yeah.
It's critical because we are not yet taught. I mean, this goes back to feedback, right? We are not taught how to give feedback, effectively. We say good or bad instead of here's specific behaviors. So in that sort of exercise, as we're learning from others, we start getting phrases from others that they may not know how to articulate it, but at least it's a point of data, right? I starting on this exercise, I said I'm the first customer. So I start reaching out to people who know me and ask them, can you help me understand what are some of the things that are my instinctive and innate strengths? Because I do not see it. I'm not fishing for compliments. I would like to understand so I can replicate. Sure, I am, right? So,
and that's a good thing.
I just need data. I need data to help me understand, right?
Yeah.
And some of the things that came back. I have a dear mentor who said, you know how to inject emotion into ideas. It's like, I don't know quite what that means, but at least now I'm going to be on the watch out for it, right? And then another person had said, I think it was you said, Sanyin, when you show up on video, like there's no screen, like it's like this. Yep. And I thought that connects with the injecting emotion into ideas. So there's something there. I don't know what it is that I do, but it's something that I should be aware of leveraging. And so starting to build up and form a pattern that I now start to put into my own words on this is how I can leverage. But it starts out with getting external data as what we do in helping our coaching clients, isn't it?
There's another thing, and I can't remember her name completely, but what you were talking about articulating, like being able to articulate what this sort of slippery superpowers are that the system doesn't hold up, so that, they're not in front of mind. And I think what you said is really important, that the ability to articulate them is important. And Lisa, I can't get her name. Maybe someone can put it in on the chat. I think it's Lisa Barrett Feldman or anyway, something like that. She wrote a book called How Emotions Are Made, and she came and she spoke at our conference a couple of years ago and introduced a term called emotional granularity, right? And that was really being able to break down your emotions and being able to really articulate them at this granular level. And when you do that, you're more able to manage them, look at them, see them. So I'm really seeing a parallel here.
Well, in coaching, as an aside, and also in parenting, because I'm a mom, and I believe that parenting is an act of leadership. I always share, like, if we can name that emotion, then we can manage it. But we have to name it first, right? And so and that's a introspection of how often, that's where reflection comes in. How often do we pause and say, wait, I'm feeling comfortable about this, or I'm feeling super happy about this. But we never get beneath the surface and ask, what is it about it that makes me super happy or excited? What about it that makes me uncomfortable? So that we can get to, as the researcher you're quoting on emotional granularity, that is so important, because if we can name it and define it, then we know how to manage it. It's another piece of data.
Yeah, and use it. Alessia has told us it is Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Thank you, Elisa.
And she also put in a link to it. And somebody has already agreed that parenting is leadership.
Thank you. That's where I draw my lessons from. My last HBR article was about parenting lessons from the pandemic for leadership. So with my friend Ron Carucci, Lisa Feldman Barrett. Thank you.
Yep. So I don't know how time has gone so quickly. Good Lord, it is already we have 10 minutes. Here's two things. Two things I'd love to hear about, which kryptonite and life of significance. Which one?
Let's talk about life of significance. So this is this phrase was sparked by a good friend of mine, because I also work with or draw on military wisdom, sports and military, right? Because there you have instant feedback as to how things are going. And this is from my friend. He's now an Admiral Jamie Sant, who is a former SEAL officer. And we were talking in December of 2019. And Jamie said, when he talks to incoming SEALs, he asks them, do you want, who here is here because you want to live a life of fame? Or we want an easy life. And of course, no one raises their hands. And so he's like, there's a difference between the life of significance and the life of importance, right? And it's getting beyond societal measures of, wow, important first, based on status, think about it as financial capital or status capital, all of those things, because a lot of times it's the things we do that may be unseen, but that's having that ripple effect. And so the pandemic hit, and we, at our center, we partnered up with the Duke Divinity School to really explore something that is meaningful. We said, you know what? How about hooking it around this idea of a life of significance? And we all have the choice to be significant, right? Because in the moments, in that kind word that we give to another person, we don't know the effects of that, but we know there's a positive effect, right? And so this life of significance, go to our podcast, dukelifeofsignificance.org. I'm teaming up for the first 2 episodes. I teamed up with Pau Gasol, who is an Olympian. He's now an IOC on the Athletes Commission, and he's a senior, a distinguished fellow with our center, to interview 16-year-old Marley Diaz, who is the founder of 1000 Black Girl Books. She started that when she was age 12. Because you know what?
Wow.
It's also independent of age, background. We can all do that. And associated with that is also this social media campaign with hashtag Duke's Significance, where we're asking people who listen to these stories, who has been a hero in your life? Share that, because they may not know. Like you may think, wow, this mentor, they know. This connects with superpowers, right? They must know how important they've been in my life, or that thing that they said actually changed how I saw myself. I'm willing to bet they don't know. So we give those people shout outs. They can be our parents. They can be our friends. They can be that teacher we had in 3rd grade. They do not know. Let's make it implicit. Let's make the implicit explicit.
That is so powerful, because I remember thinking once, what is my purpose in life? And then I think, what if I don't even know the purpose in life that I've had for someone else? And I gave it most powerful experience I had of this is I was at, I gave an ICF keynote years ago, like 2004. And in 2006, this man came up to me, and I'd used this image of how do you stop when you're in free fall, how when a plane circles down, if you can work with the landing gear, it helped the plane and everyone was saved. This guy came up to me 2 or 3 years later and said, I went home after the conference and I told my son about this whole, even if you're in free fall, just find the small thing like your landing gear that will stabilize you. And he said his son came down about a half hour after the talk and said, Dad, I need to tell you something. I was going to kill myself. And now I've heard about the landing gear. I'm going to search for my landing gear instead.
Oh my goodness.
And then I think if it hadn't been, I just so happened to run into him again 3 years later, I would never have known. You know, and so for all of us, I really think there's things that we've said and done just like that, Sanyin, that you have no idea. And so these micro choices we have to use our superpowers for good
Yes.
can have incredible downstream implications.
And to also, if that's happening, if there are things we do, moments we don't know about, can we also step up and start talking about moments that have had an impact on our lives? So I would encourage everyone listening, share those on LinkedIn, share those on Instagram, and then hashtag Duke Significance, and we would love to amplify that. I mean, let's make a movement of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see we have one person, Marielle, who's talking about how this relates to the gratitude letters.
Yes.
That Marty Seligman talks about, and you've done that.
It's so important, right? It's so important because we recognize we never got where we are alone. This idea that we work hard, we do our best, but our success is because of the vast investments that so many others around us have made. So constantly, reach out and thank those people in our lives as a reminder to ourselves that we also have a responsibility as part of our legacy to impact other people's lives.
You know, I really love the distinction you made about a life of significance versus a life of importance. Just love to hear a little more about that. It's a very, very beautiful idea.
I think for a lot of us high achievers, there's a chase that's happening, right? Where there's whether this is the award or this is the amount or this is, or even in today's social media world, question is how many followers do you have, right? But there can be a difference between that and the impact that we're making and the cascading second, third, and fourth order impact as you've shared in your free fall story, right? Remember, I guess one story I have is, or one example or analogy, when I became a LinkedIn influencer, and that was a long story, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I was worried because I was elated, and then I was worried because I turned to my husband and I said, what if I only get 5 followers and it's so known and seen, and here are my friends and they have like this many, and wouldn't that be an embarrassment if I only have 5 followers? Like, wouldn't I be failing? And my husband said, okay, if you only have 5, but you are helping those 5 people think about things in different ways and it's helping their lives, would that be success? I said, yeah. He was like, then don't worry about the number of followers. Just focus on the unique things you have around you, your superpowers, and also the assets you have around you that can really bring ideas out, ideas out there that can really help people think. I said, all right. So then we start turning the camera. I happen to, be around like military generals and CEOs and, all-star athletes, brilliant coaches like you. And then we just turn the camera on them and ask them the question and let people hear in their voice what the key leadership ideas, and have that diversity of voices to illustrate the ideas about compassion. And it was just that. And 3 years later, I hit more than 1 million followers. And there's the focus. So don't focus on like that. Focus on what's meaningful right now and the impact that we can make. And the rest will take care of itself, right? And we're having more fun doing it.
Well, Sanyin, thank you. You have had a life of significance and a lot of positive impact on me and the many people that we know in common, and on, probably way, way more than those 1 million followers. So thank you. So everyone, please do join us at the conference. Sign up for it. And, we'll see you next month for our next LinkedIn. Thank you.